What is the good word today with me, Tommy D? Tommy DiMisa making an appearance live from atop the Empire State Building in New York, New York. Tommy is the nonprofit sector connector. He's a philanthropist. He is a podcast host, and he has got tons of energy. Today, we're going to talk sales, how to make it easy, and a whole bunch of other things about networking and connecting. Tommy D, welcome to the Sales Made Easy podcast. What is the good word, sir?
What's up, my brother? Good to see you. I'm glad to be here. I wish I was at the top of the Empire State Building, but fortunately, I am 2 flights up from my kitchen, just below the roof, top of my house, in my attic. And that's where I hail from many days, although they do let me out more often than they did just a couple of short years ago. I'm fired up to be here, Harry. I remember you talking to me about this, and you said, I want to have you come on my show, my podcast, this whole thing. And that was like a month and a half ago. And now we're here, and time flies, but it drags at the same time sometimes. Because I was like, I know I'm supposed to be a couple of weeks ago. I'm like, oh man, I'm supposed to be on Harry's show. I got to call Harry and find out when that's supposed to happen. And then I realized it's happening today. Today is the day. Today's especially. You have an on-air sign. I have an on-air sign. I mean, very cool to be here with you. So listen, I know we're going to talk, and that's what I like to do, but I want to let you take over again because this is your show. I have my own shows to do.
Oh man, it's the wind-up doll. All I have to do is say a couple words, and off you go like the ever-ready batteries bunny. So
No kidding.
this is great. I don't know how I got the Empire State Building all messed up with the top with your
It's
attic.
it's all good, man. It's very close. The house is very tall, so I can understand why you would confuse it with the Empire
Yes.
State Building. I'm about 35 miles east of the Empire State Building, where I hail right now.
All right. So a beautiful Long Island, I understand.
Strong Island. That's right.
So we are going to talk a little bit about some of the magnificent things that you're doing to make the world a better place. I know we want to talk a little bit about blowing up connections and helping businesses grow that way and helping your clients. But one of the things that really stands out for me is, aside from your incredible energy, is the fact that you're so busy in the nonprofit space. And I just want to start there. So tell me, how did you get started and what is it you actually do there?
All right. Well, that's a really good place to start, and I appreciate it. And I've tried to trace back how I got to become the nonprofit sector connector. It is a moniker I gave myself, but it's funny when people start to introduce you that way. And I've become this thing called the nonprofit sector connector. It's funny. One of my business partners said, "Man, you're determined." He goes, "You said you were going to be the nonprofit sector connector, and now you are." So who is this business partner I'm referring to? So we are in the employee benefits business. We own an agency called Vanguard Benefits, just rebranded as Vanguard Benefits, and we do employee benefits. About 7 years ago, we sat down, my two partners, Ed and Vinny, and we said, we want to have a focus, a niche focus into a specific industry, a specific vertical for the services we provide, employee benefits. And at the time, it was actually Vinny Blasi who came up and said, look, nonprofits are great. And at the same time, I was still at TriNet, but I was leaving TriNet, which is a professional employer organization. And at the time, we were looking at it, and I had seen what TriNet called verticalization. It was their focus on industries, and they would have specific products, specific service professionals into these industries. So Vinny said, we like nonprofit. Let's do nonprofit. I've been playing around with nonprofit a little bit. And then we said, okay, we're going to do it. I don't think any of us really knew what that actually meant. But for me, what it meant was I joined a handful of nonprofit boards. I started getting very involved in the nonprofit sector. I started to look around for professionals. I'll give you one name, my buddy Ken Serini, who runs Serini and Associates Accounting out here in Long Island. I looked to guys like that, and I watched what they were doing and their connections and their relationships in the nonprofit sector. And I said, well, I'm going to make these guys my friends, and I'm going to figure out what this nonprofit space is all about. And little by little, I started to, as I say, join boards of directors, get involved, attend networking events relevant to the nonprofit sector. And, these years later, we actually founded an organization, Harry, called the Nonprofit Resource Hub. Really just the Nonprofit Resource Hub, just an organization to focus for nonprofits where they can get what I like to call best of breed professionals, best of breed specialists. So it's not a networking group. It's more of a trade association for nonprofits, if you will, where nonprofits can get access to resources, business professionals, advice, and different things that are relevant to their sector. So long story short, if there's such a thing. I tend to be more short story long in my approach. But I actually had a friend of mine, we used to work together, and he had heard me say, all right, hang on a second. Long story short, he goes, hold on. He goes, you couldn't make a long story short if you wanted to. And I said, fair enough, Mike. So anyhow, I try. But the short of it is, I am the nonprofit sector connector. My responsibility, as I believe it, even just this morning in some meetings, is how do I make appropriate connections for both my professional relationships, my nonprofit relationships, and my personal relationships. And Harry, it looks like this to me. It's like, picture two lanes in a highway, right? Never these lanes will cross, okay? Unless there's some reason, some obstacle in the road that makes them cross. So think of it in terms of two professionals on these parallel paths. And if the nonprofit sector connector is not that quote unquote obstacle that gets in the way, or that catalyst that creates that relationship, well, then these two people, businesses, entities, nonprofits, never meet and never collaborate together. So I take that very personally as my own responsibility and obligation, and have for many years. Way before I was the nonprofit sector connector, I was a connector, man. Like super connectors. Like these. Gosh, why can't I think of the book? You know, I will look it up during the break, which we're probably not going to have a break.
Like,
But
okay. During the break. Yeah.
when you start, if I ever let you start talking,
It's like Bob Berg or someone like
no,
that.
you know what it is? It's I think, is it Seth Godin?
Okay.
We'll find it.
Yeah.
So
Someone famous.
someone famous, and not me. The thing about it is, it's about, I feel this passion for bringing people together, bringing the businesses and the nonprofits together, certainly. So for me, it's just a natural thing. And then when I realized that nonprofit sector rhymed with connector, well, then it just kind of happened. So so passionately, man, I'm just trying to look. Here's what I say all the time, Harry. I believe I got 50 years of life left. Trying to
Right.
make an impact, trying to make the biggest impact I can in legacy, and really just have people go, wow, we're better off for having been in his sphere, connected to him, and now maybe our organization is better and we can serve more people. Maybe our employees are better taken care of from an employee benefits perspective. Like that's really all it is, man. That's all I'm
Yeah.
trying to do.
Really good. All right. So there's a couple of questions in there. I'm afraid to ask any because it might end the show on that question, but it's okay. All right. So the nonprofits, what would you say is a very common challenge that they face other than fundraising
Mm,
that you could suggest to people is like, if you want to get involved in a nonprofit, this is where they need help. What
wow.
would that be? Or is there a
Yeah.
thought like that?
So I'm in the process of creating something myself that I don't even know if you and I have talked about yet. But I do a weekly show. It's called Philanthropy in Focus, where I interview executive directors and nonprofits. I say to help them tell their story and amplify their message. And in doing that, in doing 135 some odd episodes of Philanthropy in Focus so far, because I do it every Friday morning, I've had the opportunity to connect with a lot of leaders in nonprofits. And I believe that, and this is not only for nonprofit organizations, I believe it, because again, back to the connector thing, I really believe that people and leaders don't always have the right mechanics to best maintain relationships and nurture relationships. What do I mean? Business relationships, making those deposits, as Stephen Covey would talk about,
Mm.
in Seven Habits, making those deposits into relationships. And I really see as an opportunity, since you ask it that way, where people could get involved with or support and structure nonprofit organizations aside, or hold up nonprofit organizations aside from just the fundraising that you talk about, is the strategy around developing relationships, the strategy around creating and nurturing relationships. Could be, there's a lot of stakeholders we talk about. We talk about relationships from the perspective of donors, of major donors. We talk about it in terms of board members, right? We talk about it as far as collaborators. I think of, I'm doing an event, and, I bring together two nonprofit organizations, and where, they both do similar work and serve a similar population, but it's complementary. It's not competitive, right? So it's where those things lie, and where are those opportunities. And look, maybe some of that comes instinctual, Harry. Maybe it's because sales guys, right? We're sales
Mhm.
guys, air quotes, everybody. If you're only listening, I'm doing air quotes. But, we're consultants, we're business professionals that bring resources, assets, education to our clients aside from just, here's what I sell. I sell health insurance. Well, that's nice and that's helpful and it helps me attract and retain talent, but there's more to that, to the relationship. So I think that's a big part of it is when somebody engages with a nonprofit, to look at the value of the relationship. And from the nonprofit perspective, what I'd say is to think in terms of if somebody joins the board of my organization or somebody is a donor of my organization, let's think in terms of a partnership. Let's think in terms of like, how can I, as the nonprofit, help that partner? Which may sound
Mm.
like I'm trying to turn something on its ear, but the point of the matter is, I think historically, in my experience, some nonprofit organizations will ask somebody to sponsor the golf outing or sponsor the gala, write a check, maybe you get a table, maybe you bring some of your friends. However, it's almost one sided.
Mhm.
Whereas I think the nonprofits that really get it and really make that strategic relationship are the ones who say, Harry, you're a businessman. How can I serve you? How can, right? Game
Right.
changing, right?
Yeah.
You laugh,
Totally.
but it's a game changer
Yeah.
because now they've come to their business partner, right? They're one of their vendors or their supporters or the board chair and said, what do you need? Now
Right.
that's different. And I think that difference is what makes something more productive and longer term. So I don't
Yeah.
know what you think about that, but
Well, I love it. So I was laughing primarily because I've been thinking the same. Like an example is it's just like sales. So you have someone that's a donor is like a client.
mhm,
The client buys from you by donating to the nonprofit.
right,
And the only time that they hear from many of the nonprofits, not all, is when it's fundraising time.
sure,
So here is it's like in sales is that if your client is only hearing from you when there's a new product or something else to sell,
yeah,
that starts to get old.
yeah,
And then people don't necessarily feel as valued. I'm not saying it happens all the time, but it's an opportunity for people who are in the nonprofit space to reflect and say, look, so and so has been donating for years. What do I really know about their business? Is there a way, maybe I can't help them financially, but I've got all of these businesses that are
right.
supporting us. Is there a connection there where we can help each other? Is that what you're already doing? But that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think you hit the nail on the head, as they say. I mean, for me, uh, I don't know that everybody's going to subscribe to or buy into what you and I just said, as as nonprofit leaders or not. And that being said, many of them might be doing everything we said already correctly. I just find, I mean, I've donated to organizations or done some volunteer work for organizations, and 6 or 12 months goes by and I haven't heard anything. Oh, I heard a dog bark.
Yes,
Who's that?
they like to join the show periodically.
I love when
That
dogs
would be
bark.
Clover and Elvis, a couple of
Clover and
rescue
Elvis.
dogs. Yes.
Hey, the king has left the building. Look, I tell you, I got to get my dog Cheeto on the show. I didn't know we were bringing show and tell and bringing dogs. Cheeto's downstairs by the kitchen where I usually
Oh
come all the way
man.
up here to the attic
Yes.
from. But for me, it's like if we all see the world as from a perspective of through the lens of collaboration, Harry, and as leaders of businesses and nonprofits, we look for this partnership piece. I think of an organization. I use my friend Ken Serini. I said his name earlier, and I'll bring it up
Mhm.
today again, because my friend Amy Zaslansky, who founded Book Fairies, which is a nonprofit organization that has given 4 million books. It's a tiny organization, right? Or it
Wow.
was. My friend Amy founded this organization because she was running a book drive for a local school district on Long Island. They've given away 4 million books, right? Doing an incredible job. Shout out to Eileen Minogue, who's the executive director over there now. But Amy is the founding ED. Went to Ken Serini and said, look, I want to connect with you. I want to find a way where your 75 employee accounting firm can partner up with Book Fairies, right? Not write us a donation check, not give us a thing for the golf outing, a tea sponsorship or whatever. No, partner up. Now, as a result, as this relationship has blossomed, the organization receives for every billable hour that Serini and Associates does, that money, or for every billable hour, they put a book in the hands of a child in
Nice.
need. So there's something there. That's from the top down, from Ken Serini as a guy who is a leader in the nonprofit sector, down to his associates in his firm. They realize, and on their signature, it says, their email signature, we're partnered with Book Fairies. Here's what they've done. Here, what is that? That's culture that develops an organization, a business to say, look, we're involved in our community. Harry, you and I know this. When we talk about attracting and retaining talent, like I talk about from a benefits perspective, and certainly with our clients, many people are saying, awesome, great, thanks for the payroll, the money you're going to give me, the benefits you're going to give me, but what are you doing in the community? How are you giving back? How are you involved? So in a competitive environment right now, from an employment perspective, a firm like Serini and Associates is able to say, here's what we do. For every billable hour, a child gets a book. Like, that is real stuff. And that creates culture. That creates the connection to the nonprofit sector and the for-profit sector. So I know you said
Yes.
you can wind me up and go. I sort
Yeah.
of say, like, just dress up the monkey and he's going to dance and sing a song. Like, that's sort of what I do, which is you kind of wound me up. But the point of the matter is, I get passionate. I go on about this stuff because it's real. It's game changing, Harry.
It's awesome. All right. So as I'm thinking through this, I'm just thinking of the negative side because that's where some people go. Not that I am, but
Right.
maybe the skeptic says, well, what's the financial return on that?
Ooh.
Because everything for some has to have a financial return. I'm not necessarily a believer in that because I believe you put things out in the universe, stuff happens, and good things come back to you, and you can't look at everything as a financial return. So, what's your thought on just the whole idea? Is there one, or is
Yeah,
my
yeah.
question too
No,
cloudy?
no. I think it's a good question, and I can't say to you, like, I've done the research and the statistics, and here's how many employees will stay around with your firm versus going across the street because of this, that, and the other thing. But I know that it's out there, and we can find those statistics at another show. When you bring me back, we'll talk about it there. But for now, what I'd say is, first of all, you can't say no one can challenge us. Anybody can challenge us any way they want, but I don't think anybody has a serious argument to say that being involved in your community and giving back as a business professional it has no value. I mean, that's silly to me. That being said, I understand where you're going. I think I do. Some executive leaders in organizations are going to go, well, that's nice that we're giving back books, or that's nice that we worked at the soup kitchen, or that's nice that we had the food drive and we're hooking up the pantry and helping them out. But what's it do for my bottom line? Well, I know,
Right.
I know and understand this. It costs a lot of money to hire people. It costs a lot of money to onboard people, right? There's a lot of training that goes involved. I mean, I grew up in the payroll business many, many years ago. I was a salesman for ADP when I first started my career. It pains me to say it was 20 years ago, in 2003, that I started my career at ADP. It doesn't pain me to say. It's just weird to say, Harry, to say, like, I started my career in sales 20 years ago, because I don't feel like I'm 45 years old. Don't tell anybody I just told you I'm 45. But I think in terms of when we talked about attracting and retaining talent, even growing up in the payroll business, I remember they would talk about onboarding and how expensive it was to lose somebody, right? That's bottom line. There are facts. You and I could pause and Google this and find out answers if we wanted to, because there is ways. If you maintain a relationship with an employee for 7 years versus 3 years, well, that's a financial situation. So leaders of organizations, I think realize and know that. I remember, I hang out with a lot of HR people, human resource professionals, and I remember years ago, and I'm sure this isn't completely resolved yet, but I remember years ago, HR wanted a quote unquote seat at the table. HR wanted a seat at the executive table. Not always was, you and I are familiar with the chief culture officer and the chief people officer and vice president of people and all these kind of things, which, I think only 15 years ago or maybe less than that were not even a thing, right?
Yeah.
So I think not only HR needs and deserves a seat at the table, but recruiting deserves a seat at the table, onboarding, and a lot of that. I didn't think we would go into a whole HR discussion, but I think it's relevant to what happens to the culture of an organization by partnering up and being involved in their community. A couple weeks ago, I know
Love
you're going to
culture. This is great.
a couple weeks
Good stuff.
ago, I got a phone call or text. I think it was a text from a buddy of mine who works over at TD Bank, my buddy Scott Horowitz. Scott was like, hey, listen, we're doing another volunteer day, a day of service, which is a thing I'm big time into. Days of service, 60 days of service, the whole thing. And I went out with a team from TD Bank, and we went out on the bay down at Freeport, Long Island, and we took this boat, and the boat took us over, and we cleaned up the beach, garbage and plastics and ceiling tiles and all this crap because houses had, going back to Hurricane Sandy, Superstorm
Mhm.
Sandy, these homes had been knocked down and nobody picked the stuff up. And it's going
Wow.
in our water. It's going. Anyway, you can go out there every day and pick up more and more stuff. But that was a thing where TD Bank is very involved and they want to be very connected to, culturally involved in the communities. And they, I think it's those major players that have a big part in this and a responsibility, but it's also the 20 or the 15 or the 5 employee company on Main Street that should and can have the opportunity to get involved with their community. So I feel myself spiraling and going in a lot of directions. So why don't you help me navigate where else I could take us?
Yeah, I mean, all right. So this is all great. I love culture, and when you think of a small business and they're trying to grow, culture may not be a priority
Right.
because they're just thinking about sales. I need revenue and so forth. But obviously, you mentioned a couple things about culture, and I'm just curious as to if what was how have you always been a culture guy, or did this work with the nonprofits help you to kind of see the light where culture can really make an impact because it brings about enthusiasm and excitement for the company as well as generating revenue, being involved in the community. There's a lot of good that comes from culture. So what's the thought process as to how you got there and
Yeah.
if there's benefits that
I think
maybe we're missing?
Yeah, I think it was Outliers. It was Gladwell Outliers. I had to look up where the connectors thing was. That's where we'll go back to the Gladwell thing maybe today or next time you come bring me back on the show. How bold of me to say
Okay.
next time you bring me back on this show, Harry. How bold.
Yes.
How bold, Tommy D. How dare you? Look, I think
How dare you?
culture to me, I think is like at the end of the day, what are we talking about but people? Right? We inhabit this planet with other species, but for the most part, most of us interact with people more so than animals. Although I do another show, it's called the Professionals and Animal Lovers Show. Check it out, pal-show.com. Some cool stuff happening there with the animals. But I think for the most part, most of us, I say, connect with people. So culture to me is how are the people connecting inside of an organization? How do you connect outside of an organization? What is the look and feel? What is the DNA of that organization? Can I say that this was always something that was important to me? No, probably as 24, 25 years old when I was selling payroll for ADP, my intention was the culture is how soon can we sell enough that we can get to the bar? Like that was like the culture that was important, right? you know, as I think as all of us, as we mature in life, it becomes like, what does this company mean? What is the DNA? What is the value? What is the impact that this organization that I represent, that I spend 40, 50, 60 hours a week away from my family to do? Well, why am I aligned with that? So to me, it's the look and feel. It's what do I get juiced up about this or do I get drained by this work? Does the company make a real impact in the world? Even if what it sells or does or creates might not be super impactful for the world and the environment, what do we do around that? Sometimes companies just make the things that are necessary, right? Can you extrapolate how valuable that is to the world? Sure you can. Tourniquets are very important, right? Crutches are important. Companies make these things. What the microchips that go in my phone, those are important, right? Okay, we can say how it changes the world, or we can just say, well, those are things that are necessary, but how does the company change? Because two companies that make or manufacture or sell the same thing are completely different based on how they care for their people internally, how they get involved, as we talked about with nonprofits. So I think your question was I always a guy who looked at culture as such an important thing? No, probably not, because I was like, how much money am I going to make in this situation? Right? Whereas younger sales guys, you and I were those one time, as younger sales guys, that's sort of what's important at the time. I think though, now more so than ever, our clients, our prospective clients, our prospective partners are all looking for, well, what else are you doing? Right? I mean, I'm sure you hear it and when you talk to other people.
myself.
You,
All
yeah.
right.
Welcome
Yeah.
back
So
to the show.
welcome back. Harry Spate makes an appearance. Yeah. So that's what that black little microphone does. If I put a line through it, it stops me from
Look
talking.
at you. You're figuring this thing out. I love it.
Yes. New technology, folks. We have incredible new software to host a podcast. But yeah, so culture is something that we go back to, is where you have longevity. People stay with a company. There, you can get into the why of people more. And even if, everyone could be creating a widget that you may not necessarily like, our beautiful on air signs.
Right.
I mean, those aren't changing the world, but
No.
someone in that place may be thinking the culture is so awesome that they just want to be around those people, and the company's giving back to the community.
Yeah.
So it doesn't need to be the product or what's exciting about the company. Right. It could be what's inside the walls, so to speak.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I mean, to me, that's the whole point. Like, it's some of these things are necessities. Like, someone manufactures garbage pails, right? Those are important. I have like 2 blue ones and 2 green ones on the side of my house, and those are important, right? But maybe that's not changing the world. But what if the garbage pail manufacturing company? I had no intention of talking about garbage pails, Harry. You bring out the best in me, Harry. I had no intention of it, and now I'm talking about garbage pails. But what if that company who manufactures garbage pails is also brings their 75 employees out to the local food pantry, or at the very least has a relationship with the food pantry, right? Something or whatever the cause that's. And you know what I think is even more important? Here's what I'm going to say.
Okay.
What about not assuming your employees want to work at the food pantry, but polling your 75 employees and finding out what's important to them? There was a book a bunch of years ago, and I picked up 2 copies in case I wanted to read it more than once, and it was called The Dream Manager. And the Dream Manager was a fable. I'm Googling it so we can tell you who wrote it and everybody can check it out. But the Dream Manager was a story. Matthew Kelly was it. And it was actually when I was at ADP, they were giving the book away to prospective clients in a major account division. So I didn't buy the book twice. I think I took 2 copies from the office. What I did. The one that I read, what it told you was some employees, the Dream Manager was like on the HR team, right? The Dream Manager was like a rolling cycle. Like Harry Spate would be the Dream Manager for 6 months, and then Tommy D would be the Dream Manager for 6 months because it was a really cool gig and people wanted to do it.
All right.
So what would happen is you would interview and survey your people, and some people might have really wanted a new car. They never had a new car. So you would sit with that employee and figure out, well, what can we do to help you get a new car, right? Some of the employees in this fictional company had to take like 3 buses to get to the job site. So some of them wanted to have, they said, can't we have a shuttle service where you can pick us game-changing stuff, like not heavy lift necessarily for the company, game-changing for the employees, right? Other person was like, I want to go back to school. So, some of the basic things that people want to do. I want to own a home. And that is a cool story. I'm going to go back and read the Dream Manager. In fact, Harry, I think I fibbed. I'm going to go back and listen to the Dream Manager on YouTube and let just somebody read it.
I'm going to go buy the book.
You can buy it, and maybe you could read it to me. My friend, Renee Daniel Flagler, who's the executive director of Girls Inc. of Long Island, she's a friend, she's a client, we just buddies, and she has written a couple of books. She writes under the pseudonym Nikki Knight. She writes romance novels, and then she writes other nonfiction work, the Dream Journey and different things like this. So somewhere in the attic here with me, I have her book, Dream Journey, and I had said to her, I texted her one day, I was like, I got your book. I'm excited to read it. And at the same time, I want to listen to it. And I can't find it on Audible. And she's like, Tommy D, it's not on Audible. So I said, can I call you later? And can you just read me the book? She didn't read me the book. But,
oh, my goodness. Right.
I'm just trying to make you laugh, Harry.
Yeah. Well, you're doing a great job. And I'm trying not to spit in my microphone because I spent a lot of money on this microphone.
Oh, my God. You got to have one of these things. You got this thing?
I got this little spit protector. Yes, but
I got it too. I didn't know what it was there for. I thought it was a hat.
All right. So this has been a blast. you have brought the
That's it?
energy. Yeah, I mean, we could go on for hours, but no one's going to listen. After 25 minutes, all the data shows people just drop off.
Is that what they say?
Yeah, that's
Oh
what I
my God.
hear.
I do
But
2 shows. They're an hour long each. That means we're
yeah,
wasting
no
time.
one's listening. No one's listening to the end. And the best part, we already went over.
Good
All
stuff.
right, so this is great. We're gonna have all kinds of clips. So
Okay.
it's going to be for around forever, evergreen. YouTube everywhere. It's going to be all over the place.
Oh
So
my God. Well, that's good.
but
So
if
I appreciate it.
people want more of your incredible, quiet, soft energy, there's just a low beaming energy, very subtle, hardly even noticeable. Where might they find you, Tommy
I
D?
mean, I appreciate you asking that. I mean, if you want to check out what I'm doing on Philanthropy and Focus, you could go to philanthropyandfocus.com. And Focus is spelled Phocus because I grew up in a time when we used to say fat back in the 90s, PHAT. Plus, I like alliteration. So, Philanthropy and Focus, you can check me out there. Check me out on Instagram, TommyD.NYC, really trying to build up the presence there. From a professional side of things, Vanguard Benefits, YOU.com, Vanguard Benefits, YOU.com. And really check out the other thing we're doing, Pal Show, the Professionals and Animal Lovers Show. And really, I love LinkedIn. I love Instagram. Tommy DiMisa, DIMISA. Reach out. I'd give you my cell phone number, but I'm afraid too many people would call. So use the social media. Let's connect that way. And if I can help anybody just with connections, relationships, just kind of having a good chat, I'm happy to do it. Harry, you're a great friend for letting me come on here and just go. I appreciate it.
I'm just trying to help you to get out of your shell.
Yeah, thank
You're a
you.
very quiet
Today's
guy
the
that
day.
needs to come out of that dark
Today's the
shell.
big day. I feel good. I'm out of my shell. You know what it's like?
Uh,
You know what it's like being Tommy D? Let me tell you something. By Friday night, I'm very tired.
yeah.
Very tired by Friday night. I'll just say that.
Yeah. So you and I have had conversations early in the morning. You're not quite so wired when you're having your drink of red juice,
I
whatever
do
that
have it.
stuff
Oh,
was.
I drink that stuff. It's called Axio. Yeah, it's not just red juice. I don't know what we don't want people. AXIO. It's this is, hocus pocus stuff I put in my drink. It's good though. Yeah, but you know what, Harry? It's all time of day. And if you get me too early, I'm just getting going. We're just
Yes,
getting
yes.
warmed
Well,
up.
now I know what the real you is like. I think it's the morning version, perhaps. All right, this has been a blast, Tommy D. Thank you for making your appearance. We'll have to get you on again,
I'll be back.
even though you only asked me 17 times in the podcast. I assure you, we'll get on sometime in 24.
I
Great
love it,
stuff,
man.
man.
Thank you, Harry.